What were your thoughts?
Well, firstly, I was very annoyed with the camera work in this, and I was very annoyed with all the cuts, especially during action scenes. Let's take the opening, not the opening scene, but the first time we meet Madam Webb in her 30s when she's driving the ambulance. It kept cutting as if there was like intense driving going on, but it was quite clear that the ambulance really wasn't driving that quickly, even though it was trying to get to the hospital. But there was so much traffic, which, to be honest, I would expect there to be in New York. So the cuts were supposed to make it feel like tense and thrilling, but it genuinely gave me a headache watching that scene, and it annoyed me because I've been in an ambulance, like going to the hospital in an emergency situation, and the person in the back and the driver weren't having this witty dialogue while the person in the back was taking care of me. And especially since Ben, who was giving CPR to the person in the back, really? You're going to quip to the person in the front? Like, I get there's meant to be levity in these movies, but honestly, they pick the worst possible times to actually put jokes in. It's like, if it's a serious situation, can we not keep it serious at least for a little bit? There's a person dying in the back of this ambulance, and you're going to make a joke like, oh, should I drive? It's like, come on. What are you going to do? Stop CPR while you swap seats? Oh, it just annoyed me. And that was what, the first 10 minutes of the movie? And there was just more annoyance throughout, but I'll let you jump in for a little bit before I get carried away.
One thing I will say about that is he's giving CPR to someone who's basically heart stopped. He's got a defibrillator. Pretty sure defibrillators are designed to restart hearts. Like, you do CPR until the guy with the defibrillator gets there, and then you restart the heart. You don't keep doing CPR.
Yeah, it was...
yeah. Yeah, I mean, with regards to the cuts, the only thing I would add is you're absolutely right. And then it cuts when she breaks, because one of the spider girls basically runs out in front of the ambulance and then obviously sticks her finger up. But if they were actually moving at the speed that it felt like they were moving, she'd have been flattened. She'd be dead. So they were probably doing 20 mile an hour, and the way they cut it was supposed to build suspense or something like that, and it was shocking. To be fair, that wasn't even one of the problems I've listed.
Yeah. Well, another thing I had with the action scenes is basically they seem to have this one transition, which was the spinning of the camera to make it seem like, oh, because it's a Spider-esque movie, and obviously spiders hang upside down and all that. And I was just like, is this the only transition we have in fights? Because it's just making it hard to follow the action. There was a lot of fighting where it was just like, okay, so what's actually happening right now? Who should I be following? Is the bad guy on the floor? Are the good guys on the floor? What's happening here? And I just felt the whole thing was, the editing was not great for me. Like I say, it actually gave me a headache, and the transitions as well. I was just like, you're making it very unclear. Like, I get you're trying to make this more intense and make it thematic, but if you take away the details, then I don't care about the situation. So
yeah, the pacing of the film was so weird. How can a film both feel like it is not long enough and also too long? Like, it was bizarre. Like, the point where you find out very quickly, sorry, we're spoiling a lot, not that there's anything that you would actually want to watch. There's a point in the film where basically right near the beginning, she's going to end up going back to Peru, but she doesn't go back to Peru until like 2/3 or 3/4 through the film. And then they push through the ending with very, very quickly. Like, everything happens really, really condensed down, and it feels like that part should have been longer, but then it feels like everything that came before could have been significantly cut down. Like, there was a lot of extraneous stuff going on that didn't really add anything to the story. Like, you start with her, you made this point, you start with her mother and basically seeing what happened at the beginning. But then you see a bloody flashback of it, like when she goes back to Peru. Like, that didn't need to be there in any way, shape, or form. And that would have cut probably like 6-7 minutes from the film, which would have been a blessing in disguise. Because
I think I agree, and I think it would have had more impact, like it did when she had the flashback, because she interacted with her mother in the past. So I think that, as you say, we didn't need the first bit in Peru. The whole thing could have just been her figuring out how to use her powers, and those would have taken her back to see her mother while she was pregnant. So it could have been done in so many different ways.
Yeah. So I thought that the way the film was done was there were so many like oversights, so many issues, just basically from start to finish. Obviously, I don't want to spend all day basically ripping through everything that I noticed that was wrong with the film, but just a few things that basically I noted down. When her friend dies in the truck accident, the truck, basically the ambulance looks like it's completely intact, and yet he's completely cabbaged and bleeding out, despite the fact that there's nowhere near enough damage for him to be bleeding through his chest, because she does CPR and then her hands are covered in blood. So it's like he's been impaled in an accident, but it was a side swipe, which didn't even seem to damage the ambulance at all. There's one of the biggest plot items that I saw that absolutely just like, nah, this is all just crap. The reason that the bad guy comes back is a paper in the diner, but they've been missing for 4 hours, and yet the front page is that they've been kidnapped on a daily paper that would have been released at the beginning of the day. And you sat there going, well, that would never have been printed within like 4 or 5 hours of these girls being kidnapped. Obviously, they weren't kidnapped, but it's like they needed a reason for them to be noticed. And they went, oh, well, let's do it on the front page of a paper, not even realizing that the length of time that had passed since the point where they've supposedly been kidnapped to now, it's not possible for the paper to actually be released with that fresh information in there and circulated. If they'd spent a day basically on the run before they got caught, it might have been plausible, but it lost all credibility. And it was literally there because they couldn't figure out how to move the story forward, basically within a condensed time frame. When basically she ropes Ben in to look after the kids, Ben doesn't question the fact that she's got the 3 missing kids with her in any way, shape, or form, which any normal person would. There's a point where they introduce the power statement, with great power comes, with great power comes great responsibility, but then they try to turn it on its head to make a different message, and it just seems confused. Like, it's just shit. And then we've got, like, the biggest problem of everything. They couldn't figure out when to set the film. They were originally setting it in 1993, and then some bright spark realized that actually it wouldn't fit into any of the Spider-Man universes that they've already done. So they then moved it forward 10 years to 2003. And then basically the whole premise of the story is that these 3 girls are going to turn into Spider-Girls and basically kill the guy, so he's trying to kill them before they can kill him. But the problem is that when they're talking, they're like, we don't know how far in the future it will be. So we've took these images that you've produced and we've de-aged them by 10 years. And they look identical to the 3 actresses as they are as teenagers. Now, the problem with that is that if you then imply that approximately they are going to be 10 years older when they're Spider-Girls, that means they're Spider-Girls in 2013, which is prior to Tom Holland's Peter Parker, who they basically made these changes to try to fit the universe together with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Tom Holland, people would know that there were 3 other Spider Girls at the same time that Spider-Man was basically the hero of New York. But there's no reference. And this is a problem when you take a film and then try to make it a prequel of another film which already exists, when there's clearly impact on the timeline of the films which already exist, but hasn't been mentioned because those films were made before this film was made. And you have this sort of like causality loop where Madam Web already exists, already has superheroes, has 3 sidekicks prior to Tom Holland actually being Spider-Man, but apparently no one knows it. And then you've got the other issue in that Madam Web is Uncle Ben's best friend, which means that Peter Parker would know Madam Web. Like, what? Did their writing department not take a look at this and go, oh, well, this could create a few plot holes here? Like, they're not even holes, they're gaping chasms between what's happened in the Tom Holland films and what would plausibly be known by New York, the papers, or even just Peter Parker, and basically what's gone on in this film. It makes 0 sense. Absolutely 0 sense.